let's take a look at some of these logical fallacies and what they mean and some examples of them. Okay. Now, to step out of class, at some point at the end of this or during it, I would be having the students create their own examples of each of these logical fallacies. So, logical fallacies. The ad hominem argument. Okay. This is attacking the person making the argument rather than addressing the argument itself. Those who follow American politics, we see the ad hominem argument all the time. Okay? An example of this is, you shouldn't listen to John's ideas about climate change because he's always getting into trouble. Okay? Well, okay, so John's a bad guy. John gets in trouble a lot, but that doesn't invalidate his arguments about climate change. Okay? It's an ad hominem logical fallacy. Okay? It really doesn't make any difference if John is a good boy or John is a bad boy. John's opinions are not based on that. And your judgment of his opinions cannot be based on that because you would be wrong to do so. All right, another one, the appeal to authority. This is a fallacy where taking the opinion of an authority figure as evidence, even if they're not an expert in the specific field that you are talking about. Okay? An example of this is Dr. Smith, a renowned physicist, believes in astrology, so it must be true. This really smart guy believes in astrology, therefore astrology must be true. Well, no, because Dr. Smith is a physicist, which has nothing to do with astrology. He is not involved in that arena of science or study. Okay? We would want to find a doctor who has more to do with the area involved with astrology. Okay? So, a flawed argument again. Moving on, the straw man argument. All right. This is misrepresenting or exaggerating someone's argument to make it easier to attack. Okay? Blowing things out of proportion. An example of a straw man says, our teacher assigned homework for us to do during our school break. He must not want us to spend time with our family. So the conclusion we're coming to based on this is that the teacher doesn't want us to spend time with our family. And this is all based on the fact that he assigned homework over the break. It's a flaw in causality. Assigning homework has nothing to do with what he feels about you spending time with your family. The teacher is just doing his job. But this is an argument that we see a lot. We're exaggerating things, right? And we get into a lot of these when it comes to arguments such as gun control, women's rights, things like that, because people on the other side do these straw man arguments where they blow up and exaggerate things. So, moving on. False dichotomy. Presenting only two extreme options when there are other possibilities. Okay? So what is an example of this? Either we ban all cell phones in school or students will learn nothing. There is no middle ground. Okay? This is saying we can't find any compromise. There are no nuances in this argument. Okay? Either this happens or this happens. Nothing in between. Okay? Students can have cell phones where they'll just be on them all day and they won't learn a thing, or we get rid of the cell phones and students can learn again. Well, those two are not causal, right? So that again is a fallacy. Okay, just a couple more of these. Circular reasoning. Using the conclusion of an argument as one of its premises. Okay? So the conclusion, but using that as an argument, essentially assuming what you're trying to prove. A little confusing, but I think the example will help make sense. Harold's new book is well written because Harold is a wonderful writer. So because Harold is a wonderful writer, his book must be well written. I think there was a Star Trek episode where robot had steam coming out of its ears. The book is not well written because Harold is a wonderful writer. The book is either well written or it's not. All right? It has nothing to do with that. Okay, yes, you have to be a wonderful writer to write a well book, but you can't just conclude that it's a good book because he's a good writer. Good writers can write bad books. Okay? That's circular reasoning. It's going around with no kind of out point, and it's difficult to argue against unless you call out the fallacy. Appeal to ignorance, arguing that a claim must be true because it hasn't been proven false or vice versa. This is a simple one. Ghosts exist because science has not proven otherwise. Okay? In this case, this is arguing a negative, which is almost impossible to do. Okay. Slippery slope, this is a very popular one, suggesting that a small action will inevitably lead to a series of increasingly severe consequences. So this one is just like, you know, the slope is slippery, and so once you get on it, you're just going to keep going further and further down, okay? If we continue to increase college tuition, nobody will be able to afford to go to school and pursue a higher education. Well, that might be true, but it's not all that it is, okay? It doesn't, the causality is not there. If we increase college tuition, some people will still be able to go do it. Other people might find different ways to pay for it. But just because one is true does not mean the other one is true. And you're just kind of sliding down that slope. Hasty generalization, drawing a conclusion based on insufficient or unrepresentative evidence. Jeff only drinks soda because his uncle only drinks soda and he lived to be 95. So that is deciding that the reason that Jeff's uncle lived to be 95 was because he only drank soda. And that's just not the case. Okay? We don't know why that is, but it certainly wasn't one factor involved, which is hasty generalization puts forth. Okay. Appeal to emotion is where you manipulate a person's emotions to win the argument. Eat all your vegetables because there are starving children all over the world. True, there are starving children all over the world. True, they would like your vegetables, but it has nothing to do with whether you are eating all your vegetables. If you eat all your vegetables, you are not helping those kids. Okay? If you don't eat your vegetables, you are also not helping those kids. But there's an emotional quality to it. Okay? Don't be a bad person. Be a good person and listen to what I say. Then we have this final one. Post hoc ergo propter hoc. Okay? A lot of Latin. After this, therefore, because of this. And that definition actually doesn't help us very much to understand it. This fallacy is assuming that because one event followed another, the first event caused the second event. Okay? And I think most of us know this as superstition. Okay? This one actually you can break down to like 4 different categories, but the simplest version of the example of this is every time I have eggs for breakfast, my football team loses. Therefore, whenever my team is playing, I don't have eggs for breakfast because I don't want them to lose. Well, yes, it is coincidentally has happened that my football team lost every time I had eggs for breakfast, but that was not the cause of it, okay? There is no causality there. It is all coincidence.